My wedding is set for April, a day my fiancée and I have been meticulously planning for over a year. She's always envisioned a spring wedding. She's 25 now, and this dream dates back to her childhood. The idea of blooming flowers and perfect weather, that whole vibe, really appeals to her. Frankly, I'm on board too. It feels like a fresh start, full of promise, like launching into a brand new phase of life. I'd been eagerly anticipating it, at least I was until recently. To give you some context, I'm 27 and I have a brother who's 30. Growing up, we were polar opposites. He was always the golden boy, the one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Seriously, that's him in a nutshell. I don't think they ever explicitly said he was their favorite, but it was always pretty damn clear. If he got into trouble, it was chalked up to him just figuring things out. If I screwed up though, it was practically a sign of the apocalypse. That dynamic never really shifted even as we got older. The extent of their favoritism really hit home when it was time for college. They remortgaged the house to pay for my brother's tuition. It was a huge sacrifice and they struggled with the payments for years afterwards. By the time I was ready to go to college, the funds were all dried up. I had to make it happen on my own, scholarships, part-time jobs, the whole 9 yards. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud of how I managed it all, but there was definitely a little resentment simmering just under the surface. Fast forward to today and I've managed to carve out a pretty decent career for myself. I earn enough to actually help my parents out financially. They're still chipping away at that second mortgage, so for the last couple of years I've been sending them $650 a month to help ease the burden. They didn't ask me to do it, I just felt like I could, so I should. But here's the kicker, even with all that, it still feels like they don't really see me. My brother is still the center of attention even though he hasn't really accomplished all that much since college. Let's talk about him for a minute. He's been with this girl for about 3 years now, and from what I've gathered, things aren't exactly picture perfect. She's been dropping hints, and by hints I mean giant flashing neon signs, that she wants him to propose, but he's been dragging his heels. Honestly, I don't think he's ready for marriage, but that's really none of my business. I've stayed out of it because who wants to wade into someone else's relationship drama? Then last Saturday I got a call from my mom. It was around lunchtime and my fiancé and I were at home working through some of the final wedding details, you know, the little stuff like table arrangements and flower choices. My mom called and said, "Hey, can you come over? We need to talk." Her voice was serious, like something big was brewing. Of course, I asked her what it was about, but she just kept repeating, "You'll understand when you get here." I'll admit I was a little irritated. First off, we were smack dab in the middle of wedding planning. Second, I can't stand it when people do the whole "we need to talk" routine without giving you a clue what it's about. It's like they want you to spend the entire trip over there stressing out. My fiancé saw that I was annoyed and asked if I wanted to ignore it and stick with the wedding stuff. I considered it, but I had to know what was so urgent that it couldn't be shared over the phone. I told my fiancé I'd head over and try to make it a quick trip. How bad could it possibly be? I asked. She rolled her eyes, but didn't protest. Looking back, I probably should have stayed put. So I arrived at my parents' place and it felt like I was walking into some kind of intervention. My brother was sprawled on the couch with this annoyingly smug look on his face, and my parents were sitting across from him, perched and ready like they'd rehearsed some kind of grand speech. The air in their living room felt thick, way too heavy for what I thought was just a quick family catch-up. I knew something was up the second I sat down. Mom launched right into it, all saccharine sweetness about family being the most important thing, how milestone moments should be shared with loved ones. Then came the clangor. My brother, apparently brimming with creative genius, wanted to propose to his girlfriend at my wedding reception. According to Mom, it would be unbelievably romantic and convenient, seeing as everyone would already be there. He was sat grinning like the cat that got the cream. Before she could even finish selling me on this absolute nonsense, I cut her off. "Absolutely not," I said flatly. "I mean, seriously? Whose idea was this? It's my wedding, the day my fiancé and I have sunk over a year into planning. How is it even remotely okay to just hijack it for his relationship spectacle?" I braced myself for some resistance, but I wasn't prepared for the united front that followed. Dad jumped in with his standard family supports family lecture, painting me as the unreasonable one for objecting. Then my brother piped up, accusing me of being selfish and ruining his big moment. His big moment? I couldn't believe it. I put it to him plainly, "Why can't you plan your own proposal instead of leeching onto my wedding?" He shrugged, the epitome of nonchalance, and said it was the perfect opportunity, everyone would be there, and it was less effort for him. My blood began to boil. I tried to keep my tone level at first, but they kept hammering at me. Mom said I was blowing it all out of proportion. A proposal wouldn't overshadow the wedding. She even had the audacity to suggest it would make the day more memorable. Dad nodded along like she was spitting pure logic. And my brother just sat there looking so smug, confident that I was wrong. That was it. Something inside me snapped. I told them, loud and clear, that if they even thought about going through with it, they'd all be struck off the guest list. And I wasn't finished. I reminded them about the $650 I send them every month to help with their mortgage, the same mortgage they took out to pay for my brother's university. If they couldn't respect me and my fiancé on our day, that money would dry up immediately. The room went silent. Mom looked on the verge of tears, and Dad just stared at me like I'd landed him a blow. My brother, however, refused to back down. He launched into a tirade about how unfair I was being, how I was holding the family to ransom with my money. He said I was punishing them just because he wanted to do something special for his girlfriend. I shot back that if his idea of special involved crashing someone else's wedding, maybe he wasn't ready for marriage. By that point, I'd reached the limit of my patience. I stood up and declared that I wouldn't argue about it anymore. This is my final word, I said. If you try to pull this stunt, you're out. No wedding, no money, nothing. Then I walked out without a backward glance. Now, I'm left wondering what the hell happens next. Am I being too severe here? I know family relationships are complicated, but this just feels like a monumental overstep. I don't think it's unreasonable to want my wedding to actually be about, well, my wedding, but maybe I'm missing something. Am I justified in drawing a hard line? Your thoughts would be valued because I'm feeling lost right now. When I got back, my fiancé clocked something was amiss instantly. I gave her a full account of everything they said, including my brother's genius plan and how my parents were fully behind him. She was seething just as much as I was. Actually, no, she might have been even angrier. She kept repeating, how dare they try to sabotage our day like that? She was ready to uninvite my brother then and there. I told her I wanted to give them one last chance to drop this, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. They've shown you who they are, she said. Do they seriously think I'm going to cave? That's what I was thinking, and truthfully, I knew the answer. Sure enough, the very next day, the phone rang, and it was my mom. She started in with this calm, reasonable voice, claiming she just wanted to talk things through. But I wasn't born yesterday. I knew exactly what she wanted, for me to change my damn mind. She kept repeating the same tired line, it's just a small thing, it won't overshadow the wedding at all. I told her, for what felt like the millionth time, that my answer was still no, a solid, unwavering no. Then came the guilt trip, a classic maneuver. Apparently, my brother was heartbroken and I was tearing the family apart over something insignificant. I honestly couldn't believe the gall of it. If it's so insignificant, I retorted, why can't he just propose on a different day? Is that so hard? She had nothing to say to that, of course. Later that evening, I heard a pounding on the front door. It was him, my brother, showing up completely unannounced. No text, no call, just full-on aggression. The second I opened the door, he unleashed a torrent of anger about how I'd ruined his grand plans, how I'd humiliated him in front of our parents. He was yelling loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear, I'm sure of it. He went on and on about how his girlfriend was getting impatient, how this was his last chance to propose before she supposedly dumped him. I just stared at him, completely unfazed. That's your problem, not mine, I told him bluntly. If she's going to leave you over something like this, maybe your relationship has deeper problems than you're willing to admit. That actually shut him up for a few seconds, but it didn't last. The yelling started again, now laced with accusations that I was selfish, jealous, and deliberately trying to sabotage his happiness. That was it. I told him to get off my property before I called the cops to have him removed. He stormed off, fuming. I dared to hope that maybe, just maybe, the craziness would finally die down. Wishful thinking. The very next day, my grandma, the last surviving grandparent and usually the family's voice of reason, called. She started by saying she'd heard about the situation and wanted to help mediate. Translation, my brother had run to her, spilling his twisted version of events and playing the victim. She expressed her disappointment in how I was handling things, lecturing me about family sticking together, especially during important events like weddings. It was obvious he'd painted me as the villain. So, I patiently laid it all out for her, how my brother wanted to propose at my wedding, how my parents were fully supporting him, and how I'd simply said no. You'd think that would be enough, right? Wrong. She started with the same ridiculous argument, it's just a proposal, it won't take away from your wedding if it's done tastefully. I had to take a deep breath. Grandma, I said, trying to stay calm, it's my wedding, not his. Why is that so difficult for everyone to understand? She switched tactics, pushing the family comes first angle. I wasn't having it. If family comes first, I countered, then why isn't anyone respecting me and my fiancé on our day? Where's the respect for us? The conversation quickly devolved from there. She kept defending my brother, claiming he was in a tough spot and just wanted to make his proposal special. I reminded her that he's a grown man, fully capable of organizing his own proposal without hijacking someone else's event. She didn't like that one bit. Things escalated quickly, and before I knew it, she was crying, accusing me of being cruel to my family. I felt a pang of guilt for upsetting her, but I refused to back down. If supporting family means letting people walk all over me, I said firmly, then maybe I don't need that kind of support. Hanging up, I felt completely drained. This whole ordeal had spiraled into a level of drama I never could have anticipated. My fiancée, as always, was my anchor. She was furious, saying, "This is completely disrespectful. They're way out of line." I agreed wholeheartedly, and we reaffirmed our commitment to standing our ground. She wasn't happy about the escalating conflict, but she understood that we couldn't let this go unchallenged. The following few days were eerily quiet, no calls, no texts, nothing. It felt like the deceptive calm before a major storm. I started to wonder if they'd finally gotten the message, but deep down, I knew better. My family isn't known for simply letting things drop. And, as predicted, a few days later, my mom called again. This time, she tried a different approach. Instead of attempting to guilt-trip me, she tried to appeal to my sense of fairness. "We've talked to your brother," she said, "and he's willing to compromise." Okay, so here's the he's not going to do it during the ceremony, just at the reception. Isn't that reasonable? I couldn't believe my ears. "No," I said flatly. "It's not reasonable." The answer's still no. End of discussion. She just sighed, all put out. "I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this." That was it for me. I told her, point blank, "If you bring this up again, you're uninvited." And I mean it. Then I hung up the phone. Now things are tense. My parents haven't called since that conversation, and thankfully my brother's kept his distance. My fiancé and I are still planning the wedding, but this whole thing has cast a shadow over everything. A part of me hopes they'll come to their senses, but I'm not optimistic. That's where it stands. I'll let you know if anything changes, but right now I'm trying to keep my head down and focus on the wedding, trying to keep this family drama from ruining what should be a great day. I appreciate you guys listening. It helps to know I'm not the only one who thinks this is crazy. A few of you mentioned it seems like my fiancé hates my parents. Let me clear that up before diving back into the chaos. She doesn't hate them. She's always been respectful. She tried hard to build a decent relationship with them. But over the years, she's seen how they've treated me, and she's fiercely protective. It's more frustration than hate. She's seen how one-sided things can be. She's been incredibly patient, but when they cross lines like this, it's tough for her to stay silent, and honestly, I can't blame her. Alright, the elephant in the room. After the last explosion with my brother, my mom, and then grandma, there was a standoff. Radio silence. And frankly, it was a relief. My fiancé and I focused on the wedding details, table arrangements, cake tastings, seating charts, the whole 9 yards. But even with all that going on, the tension was still there, hanging in the air. I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. A few days ago, my mom finally called. She started off by saying she didn't want to fight anymore and just wanted us to move forward. I was skeptical, but I let her talk. She said my brother had agreed to drop the whole proposing at the wedding thing. She went on and on about how he realized it was disrespectful and how he wanted to make things right. I wasn't buying it. It seemed way too easy, especially after how stubborn they'd been. But I told her that if he was serious about dropping it, fine, but I needed to hear it from him directly. She said she'd talk to him and he'd call me. I wasn't holding my breath, but I figured I'd give them the benefit of the doubt for now. Later that evening, my brother called. He started with a half-hearted apology, saying he was sorry for causing stress and that he didn't realize how important it was to me and my fiancée to keep the wedding focused on us. He said he decided to wait and propose at a different time. It didn't sound completely genuine, but at least he was saying the right things. I told him, "If you're serious, then I'm willing to move past this, but if you even think about pulling something at the wedding, I'm not afraid to kick you out." He told me to calm down and added that his girlfriend is already going cold on him and that he started to doubt the whole idea of committing himself to her. For the first time in a while, he started talking to me normally, joking around like a brother. He promised not to ruin anything. After that call, I told my fiancée what happened. I was cautiously optimistic, but she didn't trust him. "I'll believe it when I see it," she said. Honestly, I felt the same way, but at least it seemed like the drama might be calming down. With that, hopefully, behind us, we threw ourselves back into wedding prep. The big day is only a couple of weeks away and there's still a ton to do. We nailed down the menu, went over the wedding day timeline again with our planner, and double-checked with all the vendors. It was a relief to finally get back to focusing on the good stuff instead of constantly putting out fires. But wouldn't you know it, things took a turn again pretty quickly. A few days after that phone call with my brother, I got a text from my dad. He said he wanted to check in, make sure I was doing all right, and see if we could grab some time to talk face to face. Figuring he just wanted to smooth things over before the wedding, I agreed. When we met up, he seemed off. He kept skirting around the topic of my brother without actually saying anything concrete. Finally, he admitted he was worried my brother might still try to pull something at the wedding. Honestly, I wasn't that surprised. I just told him straight up, if he does, he's out, no questions asked. Then my dad started going on about how weddings can be emotional and how I should try to be understanding if my brother got caught up in the moment. I shut that down immediately. I told him, if you're telling me to let him get away with anything, then we have a serious problem here. I am not letting anyone ruin this day for me or my fiancé. He backed off after that, but the whole conversation left me with a really bad feeling. It felt like he was testing me, seeing how much I'd tolerate. When I got home, I told my fiancé about it, and she was livid. She said, this is exactly why I don't trust them. They're still trying to cover for him. That's when we decided we needed a plan B. We talked to our wedding planner and asked her to discreetly brief the venue staff. We didn't go into all the dirty details, but we made it clear that if anyone tried to disrupt the event, they were to be escorted out immediately. It felt a little extreme, maybe, but I honestly didn't want to take any chances. Now, the wedding is just 2 days away, and I'm in this weird state of excitement mixed with low-grade anxiety. My fiancé and I are trying to stay focused on the last-minute stuff, double-checking the RSVPs, finalizing the seating chart, making sure everything's ready to go. But there's this persistent worry nagging at the back of my mind. What if my brother hasn't really given up? What if my parents are still quietly egging him on? I'm trying to push it aside and stay positive, but it's hard not to think about it. Tomorrow's the rehearsal dinner, and while I'm hoping everyone will be on their best behavior, that little seed of doubt is still there. My brother hasn't said or done anything suspicious lately, and my parents have been surprisingly quiet since our last conversation. On the surface, it seems like things are okay, but with my family, you just never really know. I keep telling myself, just 2 more days. If I can get through this, everything will be fine. We're doing everything in our power to make sure things go smoothly. The wedding planner is in the loop. The venue staff knows what to look out for. We've made it crystal clear that absolutely no nonsense will be tolerated. My fiancée is fully prepared to throw people out herself if she has to, and honestly, so am I. I'm trying to stay cautiously optimistic, but if this whole thing has taught me anything, it's that with my family, nothing is ever simple. Fingers crossed that this truce is for real and not just another setup for more drama. I'll give you guys an update after the big day. Okay guys, time for the update I know you've all been waiting for. The wedding day is over, and unfortunately, it was just as chaotic as I feared. We got through it, but not without some drama. Okay, so the day started off perfectly. The weather was amazing. My fiancé looked beautiful and everything at the venue was running smoothly. We had a quiet morning getting ready, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could actually breathe. My parents showed up on time looking happy and surprisingly normal. Even my brother showed up without any smug attitude or weird energy, which I'll admit caught me off guard for a second. I thought maybe they really did drop the whole proposal thing. The ceremony went off without a hitch. The moment she started walking down the aisle, a wave of emotion crashed over me. It felt surreal, like something I'd only imagined. Every detail was perfect, mirroring exactly what we had meticulously planned together. The vows felt incredibly personal, the kiss a promise of forever. As we walked back, hand in hand as husband and wife, a flicker of hope ignited within me. Maybe I'd misjudged the situation. Maybe they actually would honor our day, our wishes. But deep down, a nagging feeling persisted, telling me this idyllic moment was destined to shatter. The reception kicked off with a burst of energy. Laughter filled the air, people were dancing, genuinely enjoying themselves. My wife and I were caught up in the whirlwind of making our rounds, expressing our gratitude to each and every guest. It was during this that I spotted my brother. He was lurking near the DJ booth, locked in a serious conversation with my dad. The grim look on his face felt completely out of place for a celebration. An unsettling feeling gnawed at my gut. I tried to dismiss it, to give them the benefit of the doubt, but that was a mistake. I should have acted on instinct. Speeches time arrived and my anxiety ratcheted up. My dad went first, delivering the standard, heartfelt sentiments about marriage and family. Then it was my brother's turn, a moment I hadn't even wanted. My mom had been adamant, insisting on his inclusion as a necessary gesture. He started off well enough, offering congratulations to my wife and I, sharing a few lighthearted anecdotes from our childhood. Then the tone shifted abruptly. He grew strangely emotional, bringing up his girlfriend, an unscripted deviation that silenced the room. I felt my wife's grip tighten on my hand. My brother continued, pouring his heart out about his love for his girlfriend, claiming that witnessing our wedding had inspired him to propose. My heart pounded in my chest. Before I could even process what was happening, he turned to his girlfriend, got down on one knee, and presented a ring. A stunned silence hung in the air, broken only by a smattering of awkward applause. His girlfriend's face registered pure shock, and certainly not in a good way. My wife released my hand, stood up, and uttered a terse, disbelieving, "Are you kidding me?" My body acted on its own accord. I stood up, marched directly to my brother, and told him firmly, "You need to leave now." He tried to argue, dismissing his grand gesture as a harmless, inconsequential act that didn't detract from the wedding. I wasn't buying it for a second. I gave the signal to the venue staff, who had been briefed on this exact contingency. They approached to escort him out. That's when everything exploded. My dad intervened, yelling at me to let it go, not to ruin the day. My brother started shouting about how selfish I was being, and his girlfriend looked as though she wanted to disappear from existence. The entire reception was now a captive audience to this family drama. The staff managed to usher my brother outside, but his tirade continued. My dad followed, and I couldn't contain myself any longer. I had to confront them. Outside the venue, it descended into complete chaos. My brother was ranting about how I'd humiliated him in front of everyone. My dad was attempting to mediate, suggesting we all just talk it out. I stood my ground, telling them both there's nothing to talk about. You both disrespected my wife and me on our wedding day. You're done here. That's when my brother lost it completely. He took a step towards me as if to throw a punch, but the venue staff intervened, holding him back. My dad then turned on the staff, berating them for overreacting, arguing that we were family, but they were unmoved. They issued an ultimatum, "Sir, you need to leave now or we'll call the police." Finally, my brother's girlfriend spoke up. "I didn't even want this," she said, her voice laced with frustration. "You've made a fool of yourself." With that, she stormed off, leaving my brother standing there, looking utterly defeated. Eventually, the staff managed to remove both my brother and my dad from the property. My mom emerged from the venue, crying, begging me to let them back in. I drew a line in the sand. "If you don't go back inside and behave yourself, you're next." She looked at me as if I'd struck her, but she turned and went back inside without another word. When I walked back into the reception, the atmosphere was thick with tension. People were whispering, and I could feel every eye on me. My wife looked furious, rightfully so, at the disruption. She came over to me, wrapped her arms around me, and said, "Let's just move on. This is our day," I kept telling myself. We needed to reclaim it, salvage what we could. We did our best. We danced, we cut the damn cake, and tried to ignore the elephant in the room, the shadow my brother's antics had cast over everything. By the end of the night, most of our guests seemed to be enjoying themselves again, or at least pretending to. When the reception finally ended, my wife and I practically crawled into the car, completely drained. She looked at me, managed a weak smile, and said, "Well, at least we handled it." We both laughed, a kind of exhausted, slightly hysterical laugh. What else could we do? It wasn't the perfect, fairy tale wedding we'd envisioned, but we were married. That's what mattered, right? The day after, however, the fallout began. It was a whirlwind of phone calls and hushed whispers rippling through the extended family. News travels fast, especially bad news, and suddenly everyone had an opinion, a judgment, or a thinly veiled insult to offer. Some called, ostensibly to check in on us, but they couldn't resist slipping in little digs or probing for juicy details about the drama. Others, aunts and uncles mostly, flat out scolded me for causing tension, as if my brother's carefully planned stunt wasn't the actual problem. My Aunt Carol even had the nerve to say something like, "You know how he is. You should have just let it go, for the sake of peace." Meanwhile, the family group chat transformed into a passive-aggressive minefield of cryptic messages and carefully curated likes on certain pointed comments. It was exhausting, unbelievably so. Yeah, that's where things stand for now. I'm not sure how I'm going to navigate things with my family moving forward. The trust one had in them feels like it's been shattered. I'll update you later when I have more time to process all of this. Thanks for listening, it helps. Take care. It's been 3 weeks since the wedding, and frankly, my family has completely lost it. After the reception, my wife and I decided we needed to disconnect for a couple of days, just to breathe. We turned off our phones, ignored the piling messages, and tried to focus on the simple fact that we were, finally, married. It was a brief oasis of calm, but it couldn't last. The silence was shattered when we finally checked our phones. Dozens of missed calls and texts from my mom, my dad, and predictably, my brother. The messages ranged from guilt trips designed to manipulate me to outright, unadulterated rage. My mom's texts were all variations on the theme of how I had embarrassed the family and humiliated my precious brother by having him escorted out in front of everyone. My dad tried to play the neutral mediator, but even his messages seemed to subtly excuse and defend my brother's actions. And my brother? He just went straight for the jugular. He called me selfish, said I'd ruined his life, and even accused me of turning his girlfriend against him. Speaking of his girlfriend, she dumped him. Apparently, the wedding debacle was the final straw for her. One of my cousins, who's close to her, told me she was furious that he completely disregarded her feelings and turned what should have been our day into his own personal stage. She even said she felt second-hand embarrassment watching him being dragged out by security. Honestly, I don't blame her. If I were in her position, I probably would have done the same thing. But back to the family meltdown. After avoiding their calls for as long as I could, I finally caved and answered my mom's. The second I picked up, she burst into tears, launching into a tirade about how I could treat my brother like that, how devastated and broken he was, and how I clearly didn't care about the family. I tried to stay calm and pointed out that my brother had brought this entire mess upon himself. I'd warned him repeatedly. She wouldn't hear it. She kept insisting that I should have just let it go because it was just a proposal and it wouldn't have hurt anything. I finally snapped. "Mom," I said, "he disrespected me and my wife on the most important day of our lives. If you think I'm the bad guy for standing up for myself, then that's your problem, not mine." That didn't go over well. She started screaming about how I was tearing the family apart and I just hung up. I was done arguing. Then my dad decided to make an unannounced visit to our house. My wife and I were starting to feel like the storm was finally passing when I heard a knock at the door. There he was, standing on our porch with that stern, disappointed look on his face. He claimed he wanted to talk things out, but it quickly devolved into another lecture about how I should have handled things differently. He kept repeating the same tired lines: "You didn't have to escalate it like that, and family is supposed to forgive each other." I tried to reason with him. "Dad," I said, "I didn't escalate anything. I told him not to do it and he did it anyway. What choice did I really have? Was I just supposed to be his punching bag?" He couldn't answer that simple question himself, but that didn't stop him from laying on the guilt trip thick. I remember him actually saying, "You know, I don't have anyone else. You're supposed to be my role model." That line almost made me choke with laughter. Honestly, if I'm the best example he can find, he's really not paying attention. But the real circus act came a few days later. My wife and I were craving a quiet evening and decided to grab a bite at a local place, hoping for some peace and quiet. And who should stroll in? My brother. How he even knew we were there is beyond me, but he came in hot, like a man on a mission. He beelined straight for our table and started shouting about how I had ruined his life. The whole restaurant stopped to stare, and I could see my wife's face turning a shade of red that suggested she was ready to hurl her wine at him. I told him calmly, "You need to leave before you make an even bigger fool of yourself." Naturally, that just poured gasoline on the fire. He launched into this whole rant about how his girlfriend had dumped him, and of course, it was all my fault. He actually yelled, "You made me look like an idiot in front of everyone. You destroyed my relationship." My response was simple and true: "You did that to yourself. Maybe if you respected other people's boundaries, you wouldn't be in this mess." By now, the manager was hovering, politely but firmly asking him to leave. My brother, in his infinite wisdom, refused, declaring he had a right to confront me. The manager threatened to call the cops, and that's when things escalated from loud to physical. He actually tried to push past the manager to get to me, but thankfully, a couple of guys nearby stepped in and restrained him. The whole scene was a complete embarrassment. People were shouting, my wife was beyond furious, and my brother was dragged out of the restaurant kicking and screaming. We didn't even bother finishing our meals. On the drive home, my wife was quiet for a long time and then finally said, "I think it's time to cut ties, you know?" And honestly, I couldn't agree more. This whole mess has just highlighted how toxic my family can be, and I can't keep putting her, or myself, through it. Since then, I've gone no contact with him and low contact with my parents. Word on the street is that he's been telling anyone who will listen that I'm the reason his world is collapsing. He's blaming me for his breakup, his public humiliation, and every other misfortune that's befallen him. It's frustrating to hear, sure, but I'm officially done caring. I've wasted too much time and energy dealing with his drama, and I'm ready to move on. My wife and I are concentrating on building our own life, a life free from that kind of chaos. It's not easy, but it feels like the right path. I've finally learned that sometimes you have to prioritize yourself and your happiness, even if it means walking away from people who refuse to treat you with respect. That's where things stand right now.